Exciting to see everybody. Good morning, everyone. On behalf of the Cates family, the Oilers organization, we just thank everybody for joining us today. Certainly an exciting day for the organization and our fans across oil country. Appreciate everybody being here for this media availability with our general manager, Stan Bowman, our new head coach, Mike Babcock, and associate coach, DJ Smith. Welcome to Edmonton, gentlemen. Excited to have you. We'll begin with brief opening comments, and then we'll open it up to the floor for questions to the media. So with that, Stan, I'm going to turn it over to you for some opening comments. Thank you.
Thanks, Tim. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for taking some time here. I thought I would start by giving kind of a recap of where we've been, and then turn it over to Mike for his comments. So we started, I shouldn't say we started, we met the last time in this room probably 6 or 7 weeks ago at the end of our season, and at that time I explained that the plan was to do a thorough review of our team. We had a disappointing end to the season, so we wanted to evaluate all aspects of the team, and that's where we left it. So a lot has happened since that point. Those conversations that I had revolved around internal discussions with management people. We did a thorough analytical review of what happened this season on the ice. I also had the exit meetings with the players, got their perspective on things, and then we took some time to reflect, as a management group on where we wanted to go. So we made a decision that we felt we needed a new voice to be the leader of the team from the coaching perspective. So we made the change, and then that set in motion a new process in trying to find the next coach. So we spent some time discussing what attributes that coach would ideally have. And part of it was in analyzing our season and what went well, what didn't go well, and also trying to look at what we think we need in order to get to the next level. Some of those attributes we decided that were imperative were a coach with some experience. And the last two coaches that the Oilers had hired were first-time coaches. And I think at the time that they were brought in, it made a lot of sense and it was a really good fit. And I think you have to look at where the organization is right now. And at this moment in time, I think we need something different than we had before. The qualities that we were looking for were someone who has a strong pedigree, a lot of experience. This is a hockey market here. The fans are passionate. The expectations are high. So we were looking for somebody that clearly had an experience, also had a winning pedigree that was important. So we set out to speak to those people. So, we had a process that we put in place. We went through it. I talked to some different coaches. And I remember placing a call to Mike. I know Mike a little bit. He was in Detroit when my dad was there as an advisor. And, so I've had a friendly relationship with Mike for a while. And I know those days in Detroit when he was coaching and my dad had just finished coaching, they would talk hockey every day, and my dad would talk about, Mike's mind for the game and his attention to detail. So I was familiar with Mike, but I hadn't spoken to him in a few years. So I placed that call and, kind of learned what he was doing, and also asked him if he was interested in talking about the position at Edmonton. And I remember his answer was like, I've got a great thing going on here. I've enjoyed my life. But he said, your situation's really interesting. Let me think about it. So we had a couple follow-up conversations, and then that led to an in-person meeting with myself and Mike and Jeff Jackson. The three of us met, probably 3.5 hours. We talked about our team, asked a lot of deep dive on a variety of topics. And I left that conversation Very impressed with Mike's knowledge of the game, knowledge of our team, perspective and insight on how he could be a helpful member of where we're going with this team. And I was really impressed. And I went into that meeting really with no expectations. I had a lot of questions to ask. I walked out of there very impressed. And part of the conversations in that meeting, Mike said to us, I think if you want to continue to talk, I would want to have a conversation with some of the players just to understand where their mind's at as well. And I'm sure Mike will get into that. So then that took place as well. Mike met with some of our players. The next part of the process is we had a meeting with ownership. So this went on it stretched out for a long period of time. And once we crossed all those bridges and we really felt Mike was the guy, then we reached out to the NHL to contact them and get their thoughts on Mike returning to coach for us. And they wanted to do a review of things, and it took a little bit of time, so we were patient with that. And at the conclusion of that, they said that they put their release out, whatever it was, about a week or so ago, and then we moved forward. So that's what took us here today. Very excited to be sitting here in front of you with these two great coaches. DJ was also part of this process most recently once Mike was excited to join our staff. We started talking about how we could make this an elite coaching staff, and DJ's experience as a head coach as well as an associate coach, he's done a little bit of everything. He's got a great track record, so I'm excited, and I'll turn it over to Mike.
Thanks very much, Stan. I think you covered everything I was going to say, but well done. Honey, thanks for coming here today and being with me, and thanks for agreeing to let us have this opportunity. And then for my kids, I know you'll be watching. Love you, appreciate your support. It feels to me today is kind of like it was in 2002 when I joined Anaheim. You're joining the best league in the world, and you have a feeling of gratitude. You're grateful. I mean, it's an unbelievable place. I'm a Western Canada guy. The Oil has the fans like nobody, so it's a special, special thing. I have to tell you, I was enjoying retirement like you can't believe, and never thought that we'd be back in this room or coach again. My son was coaching. I get to break down lots of clips and watch lots of hockey because he's involved, so you get your juices that way, but I never thought of this. Stan kind of told you what happened when they reached out. The little caveat, though, was when I knew that I was going to get together with Connor, and Leon, and Zach, that was worth the drive. I got to tell you, that kind of changed everything. And, Stan said it when I sat in the meeting with Jax, him and Harrison, after 3.5 hours, and we'd gone through everything, it was very evident there was an alignment there. And we went back and forth on what we had to do to get to be championship material, and you left that meeting thinking, this is pretty good. When I sat down with the players, now that was just phenomenal. So the interaction with star players who want nothing more than to win and tell you how they're willing to change and adjust to make that happen, it's pretty exciting for a coach. And I have to tell you, I went through in detail the changes that would have to be made for us to have success when it mattered. And when they said they were all in, like Stan said, the next step was to get together with the ownership group. And it's so important when you're the coach with the general manager of a National Hockey League team that you're all aligned. And what I mean by that is there's going to be lots of hard communication. But as long as that communication is straightforward and behind closed doors and respectful of one another, you have a chance to improve the organization and get better. And that's what those 4 hours were. I was so impressed. I'd really like to actually thank Darryl at this time. Just the way he stood up here in the last 3 weeks, I'm so impressed. I'm so impressed with his family and what he's done that I'm thankful. So just to wrap up here, You know, obviously, a lot of things have changed since I talked about in '02. It's 26 today. The league's changed, the players change, and you have to change and grow as a coach. You just have to. I know from experience what won at the Olympics in Vancouver in 2010 couldn't win in Sochi at 2014. You have to adjust. You have to get better. You have to change. And that's what that process starts here tomorrow. Is there's going to be continued collaboration with our players, but we're very excited to get going, and we're real thankful for this opportunity. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Stan. Thank you, Mike. We're going to open it up to the media. So for questions, please raise your hand, wait for the microphone, state your name, your organization, and we'll begin. So why don't we start up front here, Ryan?
Mike, welcome to Edmonton.
Thanks, Ryan.
Just wanted to go back to Columbus, or just maybe looking for some clarity there. You issued a statement after the guys on the podcast had talked about you looking at players' phones and such, and you basically said, you know, this was irresponsible of them to be suggesting there was anything wrong with it. Then within a few days, when the PA looks into things, you know, you're essentially exiting that scenario and John Davidson and saying you made players very uncomfortable. Mike, what happened in Columbus and why did you choose to walk away?
Well, I chose to walk away really straightforward, and I appreciate the question here. It was very evident before the year started. I hadn't benched anybody, I hadn't talked to anybody, I hadn't sat anybody out, and it was evident that we weren't together as a staff right from the get-go. My wife gave me a call and she said, it's time to get out of there. I'd been retired, I was pretty good at it, I got back to being retired.
So, Mike, the reporting that's out there has been about you looking through players' cell phones, asking them to share photos and such. Like, at any point, Mike, do you feel you stepped over the line with the way you handled that situation? And is there anything else that maybe we haven't heard about that happened there that resulted in you walking away?
No, to be honest with you, anytime you make anybody feel uncomfortable in your life, you should take a look at yourself and you should say, how could I do that better? And I think that's what you do as a person, is you try to always be better at what you do. The situation in Columbus, they've had a full review, and I'm thankful to NHL and NHLP for doing that. It didn't work out for us. We're excited about making it work here.
Thanks. Next question, go ahead.
Mark Spector, Sportsnet. Welcome to town. 2 years ago, Stan was sitting in that chair, and he was coming from Chicago, and he was telling us about, you know, he had reconciled with Cal Beach. He had spent a lot of time with Sheldon Kennedy. He had several character references that told us that he deserved another chance, a second chance. So I'd ask you, Mike, what have you done over the past 2-3 years to deserve what would be a third chance?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think the big thing is just about trying to improve yourself and get better. I'm real fortunate that I have 3 adult children. We talk on a daily basis about how you improve, what you do to get better. You know, I'm real comfortable with the group we're going to have here surrounding me. I'm real comfortable with the management team. I'm comfortable with the interaction I've had with the players and how we've walked through how the interaction is going to be and how straightforward. And obviously, they're comfortable, or I wouldn't be here. And I thought that was important to have that happen, so a weekend they can't be suddenly uncomfortable. So we went through that whole process to make sure we're moving ahead here. And like I said to you, I'm excited about the opportunity.
Stan, as far as, you know, all those sort of intangibles, character, past history, all those things, given the hiring practices this team has made, and given the fact that, you know, Vegas hires Carter Hart, puts him in goal to go right to the cup, should the Edmonton Oilers, or do the Edmonton Oilers really care what anyone thinks about the character of the people they hire?
Well, Mark, I guess I look at it a little bit differently. Like, we certainly do care about the people that we work with every day, and it matters that the people that we interact with have good experiences, and that's important to me, and I've communicated that to Mike and to DJ, and not just them, but the whole staff here. Is, you know, there's been progress in sports over the last 10, 15 years to where positive progress, to where you have to understand what not just makes the athletes tick, but also the staff that supports those athletes. We're all in this together. We're a big family, and there's a trust level that is important here that I need to trust Mike that he's going to operate that way, and he needs to trust me that we're going to do the same thing with everyone that we interact with. So it's important what we do from this point forward, and I understand the questions that you're asking. There's going to be people wondering. We can't change the past, and really what matters is our actions, not so much. I mean, our words matter as well, but I think everyone here who's skeptical, they want to see what actually happens and how we interact with our players, and that matters to me. And we've had great conversations, been very open, clear, explicit about what we expect. There's nothing wrong with holding players accountable for their performance, but also doing it in a way that's respectful, and that's what we expect here. So, I'm excited about where we're headed. I think Mike's got an incredible knowledge of the game of hockey, but also as you go through experiences like we all have, you grow from them. I mean, hopefully you do. I believe in talking to Mike at length that you recognize how you can operate differently moving forward. So, it's exciting to think of those possibilities.
Can we get that turned off, please? Thank you. We'll go up front here to Bob.
Bob Stauffer, Oilers Radio Network. This question's for Mike. Mike, it's a players' league, and you alluded to it a bit, but can you perhaps shed some insight just in terms of the conversation that you specifically had with Connor, Leon, and Zach, and maybe a bit about what you sort of reinforced from your perspective, what you were looking for, because I'm going to assume that it was a fairly animated conversation. They had questions for you, but you also had some questions for them.
Well, 100%, Bob, thanks for the question. I mean, obviously, when you're sitting with those players, number one, you're having fun, but they've played the game long enough, and they're good enough players, they have opinions about how things should be. I'm fortunate as a coach, I've had lots of success, and I have thoughts on how things have to be, and we discussed them in detail. We broke down what was going on in the playoffs. We walked through the clips. We walked through how it would be done here and how it's going to be done moving ahead. And we talked about Leon, Connor, Zach Hyman, and the rest of this leadership group want to get better. And that's what they've asked of me. And they've told me, we have to be better, and we expect you to make us better. And I said, well, that's great to talk about in June. When camp starts and you're making a guy do things, you might not be so happy. And they said, no, that's not how it's going to be. We're all committed all in on winning. And obviously in that time period, we had gone through enough things and talked about enough things that they felt comfortable with the process, or I wouldn't be here. And I was very clear to them, unless you're 100% all in on Mike Babcock, I have no interest in being the coach.
Thanks very much. We'll go over here to Reed. Go ahead.
Thanks. Question for Stan. Context of a couple things here. And Mike's been asked about Columbus and this being a third chance and things that are said about him. He also hasn't been on an NHL bench since I think November of 2019. So those two things to me seem that there's risk to this hire in terms of the reputation and the time away from the game. What ultimately made you think that those risks are worth taking here?
Well, I wondered the same thing. I had questions about that to Mike when we met, about the fact that you haven't been behind the bench. And I think the one thing is coaches of Mike's level of experience and accomplishment don't forget how to coach. He's been, sometimes perspective away from it is not a bad thing. And I was impressed with his level of detail, how close he's still following the game. I think, it helps that his son was working and, he was serving as a resource to him. So, when you asked him about specific things that are going on in the game today, he was right on it. I mean, his perspective and insight in that was, I think it's going to be like riding a bike. I think he's going to be, when that first practice hits in training camp, by the time you get to the regular season, his instincts and his experience is going to lead the way for us.
Mike, do you feel that about the gap between being on a bench? Like, do you feel like, hey, I got to get moving again, or how do you look at the time away?
Well, I had a few drinks with Q there at All-Star break, him and his wife, my wife, and I asked him exactly the same thing, and he said, well, the first exhibition game, you kind of figure out how to run the bench again, and then you get rolling. So, like Stan said, I spent a year at the University of Saskatchewan hiring their next coach, and ended up with my son. I've done that, but then since that time, my son's been in the National Hockey League, either with DJ in Ottawa or St. Louis, or then in Anaheim. And so you're watching NHL games, breaking them down, talking about it all the time. Anyway, you're pretty current. Now my skating, like you're going to buy me some new skates. I might have to get out there a little bit and take a twirl before camp, or someone could be going down and probably be me.
I'd just like to jump in. Unfortunately, Jimmy Hiller was let go in LA, and I was given the opportunity to take over. And the first person I called right away was Mike. I know that he follows the game. I gave him a couple projects. It was good to give him some stuff to do and tell him to have a timeline. But I can tell you, just today, just our first interaction with the staff in the back room, and what we went over, it's not what I think works. It's not what he thinks works. It's what the league says works by numbers. And that was the first thing we did, is systems. Who's the best at it? Why are they the best at it? Is our personnel at that level to do it that way, or do we got to look another way? And just the way it ran, it flipped the clock back real quick, 10 years. But I would have no doubt in my mind, and I wouldn't have come here, when Mike told me that the players, how bad they want to win, and I as well am craving that, is to win in the National Hockey League and to win a Stanley Cup, and that's why I'm here. I'm going to do everything I can. I think I'm going to coach close to my 1,000th game this year in the National Hockey League, and whatever Mike's missed out on, I'm sure I'll fill him in quick, and then he'll take back over about a second later.
Thank you, DJ. We'll go to the front here, Jason.
Jason Greger, Sports 1440. Mike, you mentioned that it's important for you, respect in conversations and closed doors, and you said you talked to the players and how they got to be full in on Mike Babcock. Well, part of Mike Babcock's history from a lot of former players is at a time you weren't necessarily respectful to them and how you interacted with them. So how can you change that side of you where you can be hard on players but not be a dick?
I think that's a great question. Being hard on people, a lot of times being hard on them is confused with telling the truth. I think when a kid sits at your kitchen table and is one of your children and they ask you a question, you should tell them the truth. That's called love. Sometimes the truth is hard for them. No matter what happens when you coach, when you scratch people, when you sit them out, when they're at the end of your career and you don't play them, it's hard for them for sure. You try to do that as respectfully as you can. Why? Because you think you're a good human being and that's the right thing to do. Sometimes it's not perceived that way. But I think the other thing is, and I thought Stan said it great, anytime you're out of something and you sit back and you have perspective, you're allowed to grow as a human being. You're allowed to get better. And I think that's what this league's all about, is getting better. The other thing I said, and then I'd reiterate, is my children are at the age in their careers, they got an opinion on everything. And they sure got an opinion on their dad and what he says and his tone and how to be respectful. I actually don't think my intentions are wrong that often. I think sometimes my tone is for sure, and we have to work at that. What I've done by hiring DJ, Farley's been with me before, TD Force and I have been together since '93 in Spokane. We're surrounded by people that are going to make you accountable, make you better. They're not afraid of you. They've worked with you. They're friends of yours, but they also know what's right. And I think that's our job, right from the ownership to the management team, through the coaching staff, through the players, is to make each other better, and that's what we're going to do.
DJ, I'll ask this, having been a head coach yourself now since you were an assistant with Mike, working as a team, do you feel that, Mike's an intense guy, that will you have to ensure that he doesn't cross that line just because of the past history? And does the closeness in your relationship allow you to be able to say, hey, we can't do it that way?
Yeah, for sure. But I think a lot of times it's misconstrued. Is Mike was as hard on me as a young coach as any player probably, or a lot of players. And it took me some time as a coach, in my first year with him to figure out, where we were going and how he did things. And I think knowing him and, having his son Michael come live with me in Ottawa and being the eye in the sky there when my buddy Bob Jones got sick, I know his personality. I know, that he wants to be calm on the bench and in certain situations. And I think he is really calm on the bench. And I think if Mike's, we're going to do whatever we have to do in the back, I'm not afraid to tell Mike the truth. And, when I was a rookie coach, you just don't know the NHL. And to say you can win in junior and come to the NHL, it's the same. It's absolute not true. You have to learn the league. You have to learn what's right, what's wrong, what works, what doesn't work. And here I am, I think in my 12th or 13th year now. I know, one thing is I love players. And I think that's, been well broadcast around the league is that I love players. I love to talk to players. And I'll continue to do that. And I'm not afraid to tell Mike, I think we should do it this way. Ultimately, he's the head coach. Mike's got to make those decisions. And that's why he's won, a lot of championships and gold medals. So I guess a long answer, but to say, certainly if I feel something, I'm going to say it.
And one quick one, Mike, listening to it, you talked about obviously the top guys and they have to buy in. Lots of the players that didn't necessarily like or publicly criticize Mike were more depth guys, young guys. So that's maybe the area. The top guys never really complained. You hold them accountable, they want to win. But how can you then ensure that the younger guys feel part of it, that they don't necessarily feel the negative wrath? Like we heard what Chris Chelios said about Johan Franzen, which to me I think is crossing the line if you call a player what Chelios said. But how do you ensure then that you're going to do that with your young guys and your depth guys to be accountable with them without being demeaning?
Well, I think that's a great question. What I think a huge priority here is to create depth in the organization, and everybody on this team has to be important. And I'm not talking about Stan and more players. I'm talking about the coaching staff doing a better job so everyone on the team is important. It's interesting you say that. I'm harder on the best guys by far than on the guys trying to survive every day. But if you're going to have success, and all you have to do is watch what happened in this year's playoffs, everybody on that team's got to be important, right down to the guys that don't play every single night. And the more depth you create and the more they feel important, the better chance you have to have success. So I actually heard everything you said. I believe the opposite. I believe we're going to empower all those players and they're going to love it as much as anybody. I think it's the big dogs that are going to be going, he's going to make me do that? He wants me to do that? I think it's harder on them.
I think that's something that we talked about in the process of the hiring process. One of the biggest things that we need to do to be successful next year is we have to have more of a team than we did last year. It was far too tilted to just a handful of players, and that puts a huge load on those guys. It's a ton of stress, pressure. So they love playing. Like, players love to play, but I think that they played too much, and there was not room for other players to play more. And Mike has been very clear on that. Like, from the first time we started talking about the roster, that was one of the things, and it was, I didn't let him know what I was thinking. But it was music to my ears when he said, like, you got to get more players in the game here. You got to get more guys involved. You got to give them roles that they can embrace, that they may not be great at it right away. Like, it doesn't just happen in game 1, 2, and 3 of the season. We got to work through it, but we have to get to the point where we have a real team, because then those players feel better about themselves. Their teammates feel better about them, and they start to believe, like, this guy's going to make a difference. So, yeah, I'm not playing as much as I was, but that's because this guy's playing more and he's doing a great job. we have to get there. Now, it's not going to necessarily be a straight line to getting there, and that's the art of coaching. But these two guys here and the rest of our staff, they understand that. Like, that's when I think Mike said, like, there's alignment from the top down. We see it the exact same way. We can't have another year where we have these players that are so marginalized and they have their minutes are low, they don't have any role on the team. That's not going to happen.
Thank you. We'll go over here to Slav.
Stan, with free agency right around the corner, do you have any concern that this hire could make your job of convincing free agents to come to Edmonton more difficult?
I guess that remains to be seen, but no, that's not a concern. Just the conversations we had with our two guys we just re-signed, and Dickinson and Murphy, had great chats with both of them. At the end of the day, players are focused on their own preparation, their game. Certainly they think about things like coaches, but I think at the end of the day, they got to prepare themselves and do what they can to come in. Coaches want to win and they want to put good players on the ice. So as a player, I think you're looking for that opportunity, and you understanding everything Mike just said is we're trying to find more roles for guys. So if you come here, you're going to have the opportunity. We're looking to give more players bigger roles than they did last year.
Thanks, Stan. We have time just for a few more, but we'll go to Derek here in the middle.
Hey, Stan. Derek Van Diest, NHL.com. You got Connor McDavid going into the first of his 2-year deal. Does this organization feel like the clock is ticking now to win a championship before he decides whether or not he wants to stay here? And when Mike Babcock's name first came up, a lot of people said, it sounds like a kind of a desperation move, a bit of a Hail Mary. Is this a Hail Mary, and are you guys on the clock?
I think I've been asked that question maybe from the first day I started about being on the clock. So I don't know how much more on the clock we are now than we were 2 years ago. No, I don't think anything changes. Mike commented about how bad those guys want to win. I mean, that's the kind of common through line to this whole thing is we're doing everything we can to give our team the best chance to win. And then when you win, guys typically want to continue to win. So that's our objective, and that's not going to change.
And Mike, just a question for you. We've had some good coaches come through. Todd's come through here. Ken Hitchcock was here. Dave Tippett was here, and they all said, we're going to hold the top guys accountable. We're going to hold the top guys accountable. When things went south, you had McDavid and Draisaitl playing on the top line. They all did the same thing. What makes your approach different to those guys who are very good coaches, have held players accountable for? What's going to make it different for you when you say to Leon Draisaitl, park it on the bench for a bad pass, or to McDavid, you can only play 1 minute and 15 seconds on the power play?
Yeah, those are all real good coaches. I know them all real well, and they would have done their thing here. I wasn't here. I don't know what happened. All I know is the conversations I've had with these gentlemen. I just talked to them again yesterday. They know exactly what's expected, and we're going to make sure that happens. And so we have to do what's ever best for the team on a daily basis. That's what we're going to do. We want the fans of the Oil to be beyond proud. Now, it doesn't matter what I say here. It matters what we do going ahead. And the reality is that's what's going to happen. We're just going to make the team, everybody more inclusive and everyone more important. At the same time, those guys are going to be huge players in it, but they're the ones asking for this. And sometimes when you're 18, you don't think like that. When you want to win a championship, that's how you start thinking.
Hi, Mike. There's obviously a line to be walked here between telling players an uncomfortable truth and being disrespectful and abusive. In the past, it's been argued that you haven't been able to stay on the right side of that line. What's different now? Why are you going to be able to stay there?
Well, I think if I answered this, but I'll answer it again. I think the biggest thing about it is I've said to these guys, I'm going to be as open, as honest with you as I possibly can. I believe in interaction. They're old enough, and I know for a fact I've coached Times for 4 years. He's going to be in my office telling me what he thinks. They're men. They're going to tell you what they think. I think that interaction is important as well. But I also think it's important. I don't know. I know with my wife, sometimes something comes out of my mouth, and I wish I could reach and grab the words and pull it back in. Those things are going to happen. You don't want them to happen, they're going to happen. But I think you're allowed to apologize either way and help each other be better. I think the understanding clearly, though, is we're here to help them get what they want. And we all want the same thing.
The stories that have sort of followed you around through your career, have you been doing something wrong, or are you misunderstood? How do you kind of judge yourself as a coach over these years?
Yeah, you know, I'm not a big reader, to be honest. I am a big reader, but not of that. I'm not a big social media guy, and so I can't really tell you. This is what I know, is I have good people in my life that tell me when I'm out of line. That's what these guys are for. That's what it stands for. When I'm out of line, they're going to tell me, and I'm going to do something about it.
Okay, last question here to Jim.
Jim Matheson, Post Media. Hello, Mike.
Jim.
Couple of things. You keep talking about the players want to win. They told you they want to win. So what has to change the way those players play? I mean, do they have to suddenly start checking as opposed to getting 130 points, or what has to change?
I don't know if you ever heard of this guy named Steve Yzerman. Played in the league for a long, long time. Scored tons and tons and tons of points. And then a gentleman named Scotty Bowman came there. Didn't score quite as many points, but won 3 Stanley Cups. You know, Stevie's a good friend of mine. He'd tell you in a second. He'd rather win the Cups. We're not asking him to score less. We're asking him to do things right, to make everyone else on the team important, and play in a different, not different than their game, but in a different way in some details of the game. I've walked through this in detail with them. They say they're in.
And you had Datsuk and Zetterberg in Detroit. Does it seem similar having McDavid and Draisaitl here, and how you would handle those 2 players in Detroit, centers, and often they would be playing together on the same line? Do you look at the same sort of situation?
Yeah, I mean, obviously those were elite players that knew how to play without the puck. We had Nick Lidstrom, don't forget about him. And so, you know, we had an unbelievable group, but those guys wanted to win. No one worked harder than Nick Lidstrom or Pavel Datsuk or Z. No one worked harder. No one did it better. No one helped making the players more accountable than those guys. And so that's what these guys have asked. That's what they want. That's what they want to do. They want to have success.
One for Stan. What was the time frame? Because all we heard about was Bruce Cassidy. At what point did you say, forget Bruce Cassidy, they won't give me permission, I'm going in another direction?
We went through that process, like I laid out at the beginning, was talking to coaches. I mean, it wasn't a long list. I mean, you can probably figure out the guys that we wanted to talk to who had an experienced pedigree, and Mike was on that list. And once we started the process with Mike and we had that in-person meeting, it became apparent that he was the guy, he was the right guy for this job.